Good evening. We are nearly on to 7:30, so I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes just to let the last few join us as we come through. So thanks everyone that's here on time. I'm sure I'm like everybody. If there's any car noises that go past, it's because I've got the windows wide open. So, but I'm sure it will all be cool. Okay, well I've got 7:30, just about turned 7:31. So I think let's get cracking, and we'll move through. Certainly, I'll get through with the introductions. Okay, so welcome to the first safeguarding forum they'll be hosting, and thanks everyone for attending and your time this evening. For those that don't know me, my name is Peter Brook. I'm the Operations Manager and Lead Safeguarding Officer for British Orienteering. I'm going to be running through the evening and taking questions where I can, and it'll be great to hear from you. So do get involved as we go through. We are using the GoToWebinar platform this evening. We might be using different ones in the future where we can have breakout rooms as well. But for the first session, there's quite a bit of information as well to have a run through. But you can ask questions, so there is the question function. So there should be probably a floating bar. So generally on the right of your screen, which will have a little white arrow in an orange box. If you click on that, it'll open the question function, and then you'll be able to type a question in there, and I'll be able to. I've got that open in my screen in front of me, so I will try and get through as many questions as they come in. Likewise, I'll also be able to unmute you as well. So if you want to ask a question verbally, I know some topics are far easier asking verbally. If you just raise your hand, I will try and go through. Hopefully I won't miss anybody on the raising the hand, but I'll unmute you and then come to you. So I'll be working my way through that. Just as a reminder early on as well, the session is being recorded, so please bear that in mind if you do ask any questions live. And if you do wish to ask a question or highlight any examples from your experience, if it becomes relevant, then please ensure that you don't mention any names or other details that might identify the person's identity. The purpose of the day today is obviously to help people manage safeguarding within your club, as opposed to discussing any specific certain cases. So yeah, this session will be available afterwards for everybody to view. So that's just a word of caution on that one. I can't promise I'll be able to answer every question. I'll get that. I'll mention that now, but I'll be able to run through them in due course, and we'll be picking up any Q&As as it comes through and as I get the answers to them. So if I need to clarify anything, I mentioned about the question function. So I am looking at the hour. I have the clock in front of me as well, so we shall hopefully not be going over certainly over the hour. Obviously we'll judge it how the questions come in. So why are we looking at holding a forum? I'm sure you appreciate that safeguarding is a crucial aspect in any sport. As a governing body, we're determined to ensure that we're prepared to deal with any incident or concern if and when it arises. Within Orienteering, we're very fortunate that historically we've had very few concerns or incidents raised. However, we mustn't be ignorant to the fact that things have not happened, and we must ensure that the sport is as safe as possible for all. And I hope by holding these forums for everybody that it'll help to support volunteers and clubs to keep safeguarding at the forefront of everyone's thoughts. I think there's been some really important changes and updates that have happened this year, which I'll be outlining 3 of the key ones very shortly, to help ensure that the sport does remain as safe as possible. You may be aware of the White Review published its interim findings in February this year, and is expected to conclude its review really shortly at the end of August, with the full report which to follow, which will obviously have a big impact across every sport, and certainly I'm sure there'll be lessons learnt and recommendations to come from it. So there's just a quick run through of what I'm going to be looking at this evening. So areas will cover some highlighting the safeguarding policies, qualifications, checks, training, and dealing with a concern. So first of all, key updates on the safeguarding policies. The youth policy has been signed off, was created. Good credit to Bird and Bird, who helped put that together. So that can be found on the British Orienteering website. Oops, if I just get rid of that was floating up on the link. The link on the slide. These slides will be available afterwards as well. But that's where the documents can be found. There's lots of information on safeguarding and safety on the page. The adult policy is in its final draft. It's just been amended, just getting the numbers up to date and such through there. That will then go to the board and will be signed off. So in a difference to the previous safe policy, that has been split and is now 2 documents. There have been some questions raised about some areas that were in the previous safe policy which no longer feature. So these will be appearing in other guidance documents on the website in the future. But if there is anything specific that you can't find, or I'd like to see a separate guidance document, do get in touch. There is a lot of policy documents in the key documents section of the website that we are working with and working to develop. Also, a couple of key points for clubs. So I've just put a couple of reminders on that slide as well. For example, and it's just good to check in. I appreciate that there's not been a lot of attention such as these forums before. So there's a lot of reminders when I spoke to other people unsure about if they had these certain aspects in. So, like, obviously, has the club got the active safeguarding policy? Many do adopt and will follow the British Orienteering policy, and it's providing a link on the website. So does the website have a safeguarding section? If you put yourself in the position of new members or other long-established members, if they are looking for something in this line, are they able to easily find it? I did a quick audit of a couple of clubs today. It was pleasing to see that I could find the safeguarding section very easily and very quickly. So that was really pleasing to see. From the handful that I had a quick look through earlier. But likewise as well, are members aware of the policy? Do they know where to find it and what's included in it? And another thing that did pop up was that because we have changed policies over, some of the links that are discovered were to the previous old policy as well. So there are some updates to make, and I appreciate there's a lot that's gone on this year, not just around safeguarding, but likewise, it's just getting these up to date. And I suppose the key one really there as well, at the bottom I've just put on there, is if somebody wishes to report a concern or an incident, would they know how to? And where I've been stripping everything back is this is the aim of these sessions, to support obviously yourselves, make it easier that if somebody doesn't know how to, then they'll be able to come to yourselves if you're a club welfare officer, or have confidence that they'll be able to go to any member of the club, certainly the committees, to be able to report something, and committees would be, anybody there would be confident enough to say, right, this is what we need to do. Now, I appreciate that there's a lot on our part that we're trying to do as well, and we'll hopefully build more of these in as we move across. Another big one that we had this year is the safeguarding qualification on a coach's license. So really important to highlight this one. So coaching qualification, safeguarding qualification is now a requirement. for a coach to be licensed. That came into force at the beginning of June. What was really pleasing to see was that while we had the period in March, so in February and March, there was over 250 coaches took part in training, whether that was through the safeguarding courses that we ran centrally from British Orienteering, or if you got involved with the courses with the Scottish Orienteering Association. It was really pleasing to see, and some really good feedback that we had from the tutors about how everyone was really interacting. So it was very pleasing to see. There are the breakdown of what coaches need. So if coaches isn't sure about how to become the license, it's on there, and the safeguard regulations, because obviously they are different if they are in Scotland, are listed on the link that we have on the slide. So there are some differences. So for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, the type of course you take will depend on who you coach. So for example, if someone coaches children, they must take an initial tutor-led training course, which is typically about 3 hours, can be in person or online. And if someone coaches adults, they need a minimum of an online course, of which there's a plug here for the British Orienteering e-learning platform. We have an introduction to safeguarding on there. That would count as one of the online courses, but I would highly recommend it for any members of the committee that was looking to learn a bit more about safeguarding, and it's certainly related to, all designed around orienteering. I was really pleased with the people that helped to test that as well. So even out of interest, I'd highly recommend that would be something for people to take. Details are on the link that I've highlighted there, British Orienteering with the e-learning courses. Really easy to register and can be done in your own time. An additional I mentioned about slight change. Obviously, there's a difference in Scotland, but regardless of who you coach up in Scotland, you need to complete the Sport Scotland Child Welfare and Protection in Sport course. More information for that can be found on Scotland's Scottish Orienteering Association website. DBS, PPG and Access NI. So certainly if you're looking at safeguarding checks as well, there are different requirements depending on which region you're in. We have lots of all the information we've included on the web page here, so safeguarding checks, and that will have a breakdown depending on which region you are in as to what you need. Steps for England, Wales, really very easy to follow, and you just need to complete an eligibility form and send that either to myself or the info at mailbox for British Orienteering. I'll then be able to check it over and then make sure we assign you to the right DBS. It'll be an enhanced, whether it's with or without child bar and list check. I will run through a quick flow chart in a moment on that. Scotland and Northern Ireland, direct you to the SOA or NIOA websites for the most up-to-date information and links about how you move your that across. There are different processes, like I say, from where you live, but the key thing to remind here, and that I would urge people in clubs to obviously pass on, is that most coaches and support staff will need to have a check now. There has been a slight change, which I'll show you in a moment, and that so that message I keep obviously trying to get across to people and let people know. So this is the flow chart. So again, this is specifically for England, but just using this as an example. So what previously happened and why there has been this change is that you'll see from the top right hand box where it's does this happen more than 3 times a month, you see the arrow underneath it that says no. That previously went into this is not regulated activity and did not need a DBS check. As you can see from the diagram here, that has now moved across into a check without a barred list check. So hence there is a lot more people that should be getting a check, and purely for the safety of everyone involved, I would urge everyone to make sure that they are completing them checks. And the eligibility form will let us know. You put your details on there, we can then direct into the right one. As for England and Wales, and we will direct put you onto the right course, the right DBS. But also, what's just been happening over the last few days, a question that came in last week. We're aware of mappers within schools being asked for a DBS. We are working on that, and we are being able to put in place. So our online provider at the moment is putting in a basic level of check so that mappers will be able to get a basic. It wouldn't be an enhanced, but it would be a basic level of check, which would hopefully help address an issue if it comes in with schools. So keep watching this space. We will we'll have that shortly, but that was as very much as what was coming in today. Okay, I'm slightly ahead of schedule on here, which is good. And if you'll say there are any questions, do get them in. But what I just wanted to have a look through, and I'd like to obviously to highlight the process if someone came to you to report safeguarding concern, and this is where I think some of the questions will start popping up. But I'm conscious a lot of this will be common sense, and you may be familiar with this. But in addition, you may not have been made aware of what to do previously. So this is all available in a short video. So everything that I'm going to run through, you'll see some of the images here I've taken actually from the video. However, I do feel it's useful as a reminder of what people can be doing. So do feel free if there's any points from experience you've had to come in with that as well. Just a question on the DBS that has come in. Thank you, Sophie. So regarding coaches and support staff needing a DBS check, how does this apply to club volunteers who are helping out with the coaching session occasionally? That will all, again, depend on how often you are working. So if I go back up to this previous slide, so if somebody is helping, for example, more than 3 times a month, it is the regularity here. So if it's a one-off session and they're supervised, then I would say that they will not be needing a DBS as a one-off, as long as certainly they're supervised and they are not taking a lead. But certainly if you do become more regular, then they would need to have an enhanced without child barring list check. Another DBS question, actually, if you already have a DBS from another organisation, do you need one for orienteering, from Jeanette? No, you don't need to get another one. You'll only need to get one if the requirement for the orienteering DBS is more advanced than the existing DBS you have. So if you have a DBS without a barred list check, but you need one with, then you'd need to have another one with us. But if you've got one with an enhanced with a barred list check, you will be okay. We would just need to see that, see a copy of that, and it would need to be within 3 years as well. So that would need to come to us, and I will have a look through that. So we'd need to see all the DBS and the valid date. Now we've had a couple of DBSs sent in previously where it's missed off the date. Now obviously these people have then sent in the full one with the date not cut off, and it's been fine, but it will only run from the date that your course, the certificate was issued. There is no expiry date with DBSs. That question does come in a few times. However, we require them to be done every 3 years to keep them current. It's recommended that that's the policy through there. What is the British Orienteering's advice on coaches working alone with children? Is this okay as long as there is more than one child? Yes, one-on-one just needs to be, would have to have parents present. We do recommend that there is more. There is going to be the odd occasion, clearly, but we do need to be as safe as possible. And you've got to think back to putting yourself in that position if, God forbid, an allegation was made against you that was false. If you've put yourself in a vulnerable position, then you are struggling, and there is a situation for an investigation to be made there. So you've got to err on the side of caution there. Does the safeguarding officer within clubs need a DBS? You'd only need a DBS if you meet this criteria through there within your coaching. So coaching or support. I keep talking about coaching, but it's also if you might be assisting in an overnight trip for a squad or your club. Certainly if you are taking some people away on an overnight trip and you'd be supervising in that capacity, you would need to have a check. And is a scanned copy of the DBS okay to send by email? Yes, we can have the scanned copies through. Okay, if any more DBS ones come through, I will we'll pick them up as a run a bit later on. But thanks for them questions that are coming through. So looking at the responding of a safeguarding concern. So any incident could come from someone who's been directly affected or an individual who's witnessed or heard about an alleged concern. We've certainly had things in the past where we've been told about something they've heard along the grapevine, and then we've had to check that up. It's a responsible thing to do. So if you do hear something, we do ask that it gets reported. So regardless of who it's from, we all have that responsibility to follow things through. Lack of action now could lead to potential further harm taking place in the future. And we'd rather make a couple of inquiries and find out that there is nothing than ignore it and seriously affect an individual or group of individuals in the future. So if someone does approach you, it can be a very nerve-wracking time, but what are there's three top tips that we'd recommend that you follow. Show you care and help them open up. It's giving you full attention to a child, young person, or an adult, and talk about keeping your body language open. It's about being very relaxed, being compassionate, despite if somebody has taken the time to actually come through it and actually give you the confidence in telling you something. It's about being understanding and reassuring them that their feelings are important. Phrases such as "you've shown great courage today" do help, despite what will be a very nerve-wracking situation for yourselves if this was you. Clearly, it's going to be a lot more nerve-wracking for the person that's coming to you as well. Second one, about taking time and slowing down. There will be a lot of pauses, so it's about respecting them and not interrupting the person who's trying to make a disclosure to you. As talked about, the confidence they've clearly got in you and how you exude that within your club is important. So talk about the little things about websites to start with and making sure they're up to date and having a route for what people need to do. The more confidence that people have in seeing that clubs and members are all open and willing to hear will give more people the confidence should something come to you. Now, we're not talking strictly everything within orienteering. Somebody might come to you with something that's happening outside of orienteering, but it's certainly if we can help along there, we can then obviously pass that into the right avenues and the authorities if we need to. So it's not interrupting people. I talked about respecting pauses and let them go at their own pace. So recognizing and responding to their body language, and remember that it might take several conversations for them to share what might have happened to them. And then the third one on there about showing you understand and respecting back. Make it clear that you're interested in what a child is telling you and reflect back on what they've said to check your understanding. It's very important that we are double checking, but not in a derogatory way, and using their language to show that it's their experience. So reflecting on what they've told you and asking them questions back. And on this one, it's as it says, it's sometimes they are really obvious, but when you're in that situation, it's just a case of obviously taking in some reminders as well. So let the person revealing the concern know that they've done the right thing in coming forward, and it's clearly very important to explain that that the information that they provide will have to be shared with others. So we're not trying to keep secrets and keeping promises that you simply can't keep. So when asking questions, from your point of view, it's keeping them to a minimum, only asking them if you require clarification in what they're telling you, and ensure that you don't probe for more information than is being offered. It's not making, as it says there, negative comments or asking leading questions. It's also important that you do not make negative comments about the alleged perpetrator or what's been happening, or conduct your own investigation into the case. This is not your role, and we don't want you to get into a vulnerable position where you're starting to make judgment on what one person has said. This is up to other people, with professional people that will be trained up and will be dealing with this. You're simply there to gather the facts and gather the initial inquiry, and then we will take it off your hands and move on through there. Just a quick point on this one that's been said. It must be hard to remember all that you've been told should you take notes at the time. Certainly, if you've got the opportunity to take notes while it's being said, then yeah, essential, because there'll be so many things that will be coming through. I'll talk about just a bit about recording in a moment, but yeah, certainly if you've got the opportunity to take notes at the time, then certainly do that. Somebody, you could potentially record a conversation on your phone, but then that will open up other cans of worms as well, because you would then have to delete that very quickly and ensure that is deleted once you've made your notes or that have been sent further on in the future. But it might also, you've got to consider somebody disclosing to you might perceive that as a negative way and then close up. So it's really important to make sure that it's one-on-one and ideally sort of paper notes if you're going to take notes at this stage. If you don't take notes at this stage, it's then very important that when the conversation finished, you write them down as soon as possible, because clearly everyone should be aware, mine included, memories fade very quickly and interpretations do. You don't want to be then interpreting where you are looking. Dealing with adults and children is slightly different. So for adults, it's got to be the adult that's leading, and if they're happy to share information, happy for you, sorry, to share that information, and then asking them, they will lead how they wish things to proceed. So it's giving the individual time is important. And for concerns regarding children, you need to be honest, reassuring clearly, and clearly explaining what you'll be doing next in terms of reporting what you've said. So you have a duty to report what the child has said. Looking through onto the notes, so I just briefly mentioned this a moment ago. Recording the information, always record what is said in writing as soon as you can. As soon as you moved away from this conversation, you need to get as many points down that you can remember. Certainly the key ones that have been mentioned by that individual. You need to date and sign that information as well. What time, where, all this information will prove vital later on when the authorities start investigating things, should it go to that level. And don't dismiss any concern. So this next one, this flow chart is taken from, you might have seen it from the child safeguarding policy, and it shows the steps that we take when dealing with a concern or incident. Now clearly it might be a bit small on your screen depending on how you're watching the session, but I say it's in the policy. I'll be sending these slides out after the session as well, so don't worry if you can't quite read it on here. Do get hold of the policy. And so it does outline how we deal with an incident or concern. The two snippets that I'm just about to read as well are taken directly from the policy as well, so it'll just give you an idea. So this is from section 6.3 in there if you want to have a look through as well. In all cases of concerns raised reported to British Orienteering will consider how best to respond. So all the concerns that warrant or require referral to police and or local child protection teams will be referred, if not already reported directly to the police and to the relevant local child protection team, who will be best placed to manage such cases. British Orienteer will then liaise with those authorities in relation to any action British Orienteer may propose to take in the context of orienteering, and support those authorities as may be necessary or appropriate. So we will take everything, and then it will come to myself as the lead safeguarding officer if a concern is raised, and then I will analyse it, and then more likely than not we'll convene the case management pursuant case management group, and then review and discuss the information. So the case management group is a group of individuals external to British Orienteering who come in, and then they have experience across safeguarding, and they will decide what they think is the best course of action to progress. Sorry, best course of action. That's the word I was looking for. The next section I was going to mention was 6.4. So if an individual has made a report about something in orienteering to the police and or local council child protection team, but does not wish to report it to British Orienteering for any reason, then British Orienteering should instead be informed on a no names basis that a report has been made and to which force council it has been made. British Orienteering can then liaise with the force council to determine whether any action by British Orienteering is appropriate. Clearly, there may be instances where you don't wish to report the particular individual to us, but that we need to know about the incident, so that has to come through in a no names, and then we can follow it up with the local authority and make sure that if it is somebody that is, we've got the duty of care that if it's somebody operating within orienteering that shouldn't be, that they could be off, a temporary suspension order would be made if it is of such seriousness, depending on what information we were able to come across, to ensure the protection of people within sport. But that is a decision that would have to be made when we got that information. So I've got some questions, but some questions have come in early as well, but I will put some, so just go back here because I've got some other, an example of a couple of things that have come in recently. So if you have got any particular questions on any cases or about case management, do let me know. So for example, if a DBS has come back with something recorded on it, depending on the offence, as this could show anything from, say, minor driving offence to a more serious offence, it'll be assessed by a safeguarding officer, myself in the first instance, and then possibly passed on to the case management group to consider. So it'll be with any case, and they'd have a look through. So some might be historic, depends whatever comes on that DBS. It might be that they require further investigation, so somebody independent to then speak to people. If they to speak to the individual, it may be recommended that we do a risk assessment as well, and that would conduct an interview with the person involved, just to run over the circumstances. Again, completely confidential, but it's a process that every sport will go through if issues are highlighted, and we rightly got to ensure that we are safety conscious with our with the sport and those individuals. I like to touch on, so if we do become aware of an urgent and serious case, and we'll convene the case management group or as quickly as we can, and potentially issue a temporary suspension order. They, again, don't happen very often, but will happen if required, pending a full investigation by an independent person or the police. Some cases, again, the more serious cases, it can take a while to conclude, but it's got to be managed in the right light, and the safety of all those within the sport is the key priority. So just a quick point that's come in just about notes. Yes, people probably have notebook in the first aid kit. Good to use, is very likely to be close at hand. Thanks, Jason, for that one. Yeah, certainly. If there's obviously lots of kit that goes around to orienteering events, and that would be certainly really useful to have, or jump on a map, use the back of a map or something, certainly, that whatever does come to hand if it's an event, for example. But no, some very good points there. So Wendy, if we need to report a concern, should the concern be emailed or telephoned to British Orienteering? So there are, on the safeguarding and safety page, there is how to report a concern or how to report an incident, two separate forms. And I advise that you use one of them two forms. They have all the standard questions and boxes. Don't worry if there are boxes in there that you cannot fill and complete. As much information on there as possible is really beneficial, and will help us to get started through there. Alternatively, you can, if it's very urgent and you need to speak to somebody, you can phone myself up on the phone. I will then ask you to put it in writing as well, but by getting the phone call in early on, I know something's coming and I can start the process. I know what to expect coming through, and likewise, if there is potentially to be a bigger issue, then that might affect the sport or a club on a wider basis, I can then start to involve the most appropriate people through there. So it is urgent that you get it through. Even if you've written all your notes on an email and send that to me, then that's fine. But I do advise, as I said, the first two forms that we have on our safeguarding and safety page are the best to use as your template. So I hope that helps. So there's just a couple of questions that were sent in advance. So it'll be interesting here because there's a couple of questions that are asking about what other clubs have done as well. So just before I get on to this, there was a question I was coming back to actually that came when I was talking about the concern just on DBS. So what if you have registered with the DBS update service? Yeah, that's not a problem as well. We just need to get your details and permission to check that out. So we just need an email to myself, to the safeguarding or info app. They'll all come to myself to do the check anyway, but I just need the certificate number, your name and date of birth, and your permission to be able to go in and check that. So there's a lot of people obviously send them in for myself, grant me permission, I can quickly check on the system, and then I will update your qualifications and your records appropriately. Okay, so a couple of questions that came through. So I've been asked some clarity for coaches and social media. Social media is clearly very good in some ways, very bad in another. But so the question that came through, quoted British Orienteering's advice to coaches. Coaches that are advised not to follow athletes under the age of 18 or on Twitter, Instagram, similar sites as that. I'm sure there'll be some, if I put a list here, there'll be some that I would forget, some that that everyone there seems to be a new one that pops up every week. Coaches should not have athletes under the age of 18 as their friends on social media networking sites when they have a position of trust. It may be very hard to not add other people that are adding you as friends, but it's certainly important that that's done. So increasingly, all right, sorry, right, sorry, I've just been, so the question that's come in has just been corrected on this book. So increasingly our juniors are taken to using Strava and Zwift. Sorry, it's Swift, but I think that's autocorrect when it's come across, but it's Zwift and similar. It's recognised that while these platforms are increasingly becoming similar to other social media platforms, they also do have potential for coaches reviewing training, GPS, etc. You've just got to put yourself in that position of what potentially could happen. Do things get interpreted? We don't want you to be in a position where you could have you could assess something and then an innocent conversation could be taken the wrong way. There's been lots of different examples of coaches where things have been read the wrong way, and we don't want obviously to put you in a vulnerable position. So you've also then got to have different agreements really in place with somebody, the individual and the parents. So if you're running an online training session, for example, obviously Zoom has been certainly one of the mighty kings over the last 18 months. Is making sure that you're not in a position where you're one-on-one coaching online with somebody. It might sound very innocent, but then it will also, if you're on your own and you hear that a coach is coaching an individual, you're speaking to them online one-on-one, then that's clearly it doesn't sound very safe, but it can be very safe if you have situation in mind. So if the child, if a parent is close by, if there is agreement where the parent will sit in the same room as the child, or there are other people on the call and it's not just a one-on-one call. But do appreciate that there are some coaching where conversations will take place one-on-one. So it'd always be advised to at least have their parent present. Again, go back to the potentials and vulnerability of a coach in that situation if something got taken differently. But it was interesting to see if there's any other clubs have had any experience about this and their solutions of what they've done. I've not had any comments coming just yet, but I'll move on to the next question. If there is anything that you think of that you've done of how you've managed this in a safe way, do let us know. One here about, do other clubs, British Orienteering, insist on membership to take part in junior coaching? So is there a requirement for this? You don't need to be a member of a club to take part in junior coaching, because as long as a session is certainly registered as an activity as well, you need to be registered to be covered, because you could be running different sessions outdoor for different groups. But it's the usual safeguarding procedures, regardless of who you are coaching, you should be following on the day, which I think links nicely into this next question that's come through. So developed a recent coaching, recent regular coaching fitness session for our juniors, which has become increasingly popular with the club juniors bringing their friends along. I think that's great. It's you see more and more people coming in to the sport. Word of mouth, friends, it is always one of the best drivers of bringing people, new people into the sport. But clearly, obviously, that raises the other challenge of the collection of consent forms does become more onerous. They're not regular club juniors whose families we know. And how are other clubs managing to get consent? Does the info have to travel to every training area? Are any clubs using sort of cloud-based? I presume the cloud-based is more looking at obviously the information and the safety through there, and what platform are available. With regard to medicals consent, social media consent. If you are taking pictures, so just on that social media, for example, if you are taking pictures of people you certainly of juniors that you are using as part of your promotion or to show what's happening at events, don't forget you definitely need the parents' permission for that, and that would include those that are not members or have come along to try an event for the first time. So if you have a permission form, then make sure obviously that is that you have that from the individuals that are attending. The easier answer to this is if you have a form that a parent completes as they are dropping off beforehand with their information. We need to know, again, the medical side of things. If somebody is out training, depending on what sort of onerous, whether it's in a sports or if you're doing anything physical, any physical training, or if you're doing less physical and doing map skills and such and doing courses, it's important that those leading the sessions are aware of potential challenges, potential injuries, health concerns of that individual. So everybody's got to be treated the same. So you'd certainly expect if you've got club junior in there, you would know their information, you'd have that from the parents, but we do need that and that consent from those that are coming along as well. So again, I come back to reflecting, put yourself into a position if something happened to that individual that came along and you didn't have any contact details for them, or they had a condition that you should have known about or could have known about before they did any particular physical activity that was strenuous. We just need to be safe and conscious on that. So it's 8:15 at the moment, and that was a couple of questions that had come in before. So thanks for the questions that came in on that. I will now give, I haven't got any more questions on here that have come through. So if there are any questions that you're thinking about at the moment, do add them into the question box or put your hand up, and I'll unmute you to ask that question. The intention of what the plans are for these for the forums going forward, as I tapped on and mentioned earlier, that we'll be hoping to do more. Well, there'll be certainly several these that will be running every year, and then we'll be looking at doing interaction groups about how to deal with different concerns, different scenarios. This session was certainly certainly an introduction and understanding about what the updates have been this year, because there has certainly been a lot. And then we'll be working through that, and certainly bringing in other people, club welfare officers and others from other agencies to come in and just explain more about what their roles are and what they do. So there is a role that you may or may not be familiar with, called the LADO, which is a local authority officer there, who deals with all the situations when they come in. So we'll get different people in to chat through, which will be really insightful to understand the different processes. So this was very much as a starting session. So a couple of questions that have come in. So I'll start from the top. Where will the slides be able to access in the future? So I'll be putting Safeguarding Forums webpage. I'll be putting that together. That'll be available in the next couple of days. Everybody that's been on the session this evening will get an automatic recording of this through anyway, but I will put the slides on. I will also send the slides out via email. I'm saying that consciously because I'm just thinking with the photos on, they might be it might be rather large, but I should certainly get it probably as a PDF and get them out as well in that. But certainly they'll be available as PowerPoint online shortly on the safeguarding pages. With regards to DBS update service, can these be used for any coaches whose DBS checks are 3 years old? So we can use it because it's the DBS update service does keep it current. So yeah, we can run the checks. Just send us the details which I outlined earlier, and I'll be able to check through there. And So Julia, thank you for the questions come in. So saying that you've done the online introduction to safeguarding and thought it had some had valuable points. Can you access it free or get the script? I shall speak to my colleague Howard Blackman. He's been instrumental in pulling that together at our side. He's pulled all the different e-learning courses that have launched from September. So a completely intentional plug here with the secondary school, the primary school courses that are on there, the event safety as well, and certainly the safeguarding that's on there. But we'll speak to Howard and see what we can do for you on there. It is good to mention that we've also had on the learning front that there was a bit of a delay with the API, which allows the e-learning module to talk to our database. That's now all been set up, so when you complete that, it should automatically update your qualifications as well. So it doesn't need you to tell us that you've done it or us to go into records to find out who's done it. So it should all start happening seamlessly. But if you have done that course, for example, prior to it only happened recently, there were some delays that were out of our control. If it hasn't appeared on there, do let us know and we can get that corrected. Everyone should be updated on there now, but like I said, there's always might be the odd one or two that might fall through the cracks on that. But hopefully we can iron that out. Just sort of another one on DBS. The length of time a DBS takes to come through can vary. We've had only a couple that have taken about a week and a half to come through. I think the quickest DBS that came through was about 12 hours. We did the verification on the afternoon. By the following morning, it'd come through. Some generally will take a few days. So I'd certainly urge people with trips that look like they're coming up as well to get them done well in advance, just to avoid any potential difficulties. But certainly I've not experienced any that have gone over the 2 weeks at the moment, but there's always the first time. So I would advise people get them done as soon as possible. Okay, I think the questions have slowed down and stopped, I think. Let me just roll this down on my screen. Yeah. Yep. Quick refresh has slowed them down on that, has stopped. So I would just like to thank you for attendance this evening. I hope it was useful. I said the information will be going on online again soon and shortly, but if you do have any questions, do send them to me, whether they're confidential or you just want some more clarity. I said I've been in position, I started in January, so I'm still picking up a few different bits, certainly in this role in January. I'm still picking up lots of different areas, so if there's a question I can't answer, I will certainly come back to you. But thanks for this evening, and I will speak soon.